she became sad and morose again. Her mother noticed how sad and morose Aminatu was. She was worried, so she called Aminatu and talked to her about it. "I know time is against you. Your youth is fading. You're not getting any younger. I understand your worries. Now is the time for you to seek fulfillment and self-discovery so you can be happy. Your sister and I will manage." But Aminatu refused, and her mother began to persuade her further. After a while, she agreed and told her mother she would do her best to make her proud. Aminatu's mother was happy because she was finally relieved. Aminatu started working harder to save money to leave the village for the city. After 3 months of hard work, she was able to save a substantial amount of money, enough to rent an apartment in the city. She was excited about finally leaving the village, but she also felt sad because she didn't want to leave her mother and sister. On a fateful morning, the day Aminatu was to leave for the city, a tragic event occurred. As Aminatu entered her mother's room to say goodbye, she found her mother lying lifeless on the bed. She desperately tried to wake her mother, but to no avail. All her efforts were in vain. That's when Aminatu realized that her mother had passed away. Her heart broke as she cried uncontrollably. Her life, once filled with dreams and aspirations, was now fragmented into pieces of despair. At her mother's funeral, Aminatu could not control her emotions. She couldn't stop crying. She found herself alone now with her 12-year-old sister, Khadija. One morning she began to think about the next step to take, but she had no other option than to continue her journey to the city. This time, she had to take her sister with her. But after careful consideration, she thought it would be risky and unwise to take her sister to an unknown place. So, she decided to send her sister to the neighbouring village to live with her aunt, who was her mother's sister. The next morning, Aminatu embarked on her journey to the city. She took a taxi directly to the city. As she sat in the back of the taxi, she cried bitterly. Her heart was heavy with sorrow, and the thought of her mother kept crossing her mind. After a 10-hour journey, she finally arrived in the city. With the little money she had saved, she rented a very small room where she could store her belongings and lay her head. After a few days, once she had finally settled in, she began to look for a job. She went from place to place, looking for work. She eventually found a job in a restaurant as a local waitress. She started working hard and managed to earn money that she sent home for her little sister and saved for her future education. After 12 months of working and saving enough money, she decided to enroll in an adult education program. Things were going quite well for her until her aunt, with whom her sister Khadija was living, started demanding more money from Aminatu. She made up lies and told Aminatu that her sister was sick just to get more money from her. Back in the village, Khadija was being mistreated by her aunt and wasn't even being properly taken care of. She was abused so violently that she had to run away from her aunt's house and live with an old woman called Mama Engo. Although the old woman lived in a hut that looked miserable, she took good care of Khadija, and Khadija began to live with her. Back in the city, Aminatu, who had no idea what was happening, continued sending money to her aunt, thinking her sister was being well taken care of. She trusted her aunt. She continued sending more and more money as her aunt demanded and extorted more. The demand became too much, and at some point, Aminatu had no more money to send. She had spent all her savings and found herself with nothing. She became so poor that she was no longer able to continue her education or pay her rent. Her rent was due and needed to be renewed. She was no longer able to pay her bills. So she dropped out of school. One day, as Aminatu was walking down the street, she happened to run into her cousin named Safiatu. She was happy to meet her because she didn't know she lived in the same city. Aminatu told Safiatu that she needed help and explained that her rent was almost due and she would soon be evicted by the landlord. Safiatu took pity on her and decided to take her in. Aminatu moved in with Safiatu. She met Safiatu's sisters, was warmly welcomed, and began to live with them. Everything was going well for Aminatu, until God decided to bless her. Many handsome and wealthy men began to ask for Aminatou's hand in marriage. Some of these men were so rich that Safiatou began to be jealous of Aminatou. Although Aminatu did not give them a chance because she thought she was not on the same level as them, this wasn't enough to stop Safiatou, who had become so jealous and full of hatred towards Aminatu. Safiatou and her sisters kicked Aminatu out. They insulted Aminatu and neglected her when she needed them the most. She found herself with nowhere to go. She moved into an under-construction building she found across the street. Since the building was still under construction, Aminatu decided to stay there until she gathered enough money to rent a new apartment. A few days after moving into the unfinished building, Aminatu woke up one day and was about to leave the building in search of a job when she saw a woman named Madame Aicha approaching her. At first she was scared, but she gathered her courage and asked the woman, "Hello, madam. Who are you? And what are you looking for?"